Um, so one of the things that I did take away, well, one of the many things I took away from the book was, in walking with you constantly, you have such a literary mind, and I think it's amazing that you can quote the lines or poets or authors that have impacted you on some level, and you take it back with you. But what I think is great is that I can see this happening in this book, where those workshops and those practices that can become what I would call like a life reference, right? I have one or two books that I constantly come back to. I have a podcast that I constantly go back to every so often. One of them is very, very brilliant. It's called The Price of Admission, and I don't know if we've spoken about that before.
Can't wait to hear about it.
Yes. And that'll definitely be in a different discussion. But the overall idea of that is when you are with someone or when you choose to do something, you know what the benefits are, you know what the negatives are. And if you decide to move forward, there are prices of admission that you have agreed to. But obviously people can change, people can get worse and all that stuff. So it's heavy. But whenever I'm having any sort of turmoil in my relationship, I like to listen to that. And then I remind myself, he was always allowed short. Just little things, right? But not to digress too much further, I think the practices in here especially can become those life references. There's no reason why, and correct me if I'm wrong, as I see it, that my vision board right now is my permanent vision board. There's no reason why I think that my resume right now is going to be my permanent resume. In 3 years, when I'm thinking to myself, how am I sinking into the quicksand again? How am I, hitting a brick wall again? Like what am I doing wrong? I thought I dealt with this or dealt with something 3 years ago. I think there's always going to be things in your life where you can come back to this.
Yeah.
And do something, or if one doesn't make sense to you in this moment right now from where I'm at,
right,
it might make sense to me in 10 years.
Totally. And life has triggers, and unconsciously we go back to points in our life where we felt insecure, or we felt hurt, or there was pain, or somebody didn't like you. And so if there's a trigger for that, I've been reading a lot about this, like how do you go back and inform your subconscious from the past that you're okay now. And so, because I think about like when, something happened to me when I was 16, and I'll see something in a movie that's similar to what happened to me, and it triggers this just like racing heart. And so I'm trying to learn about that, and I look forward to writing about that. But I think there's always going to be triggers that take you back to some time in your life when it hurt. And that was the process I walked through to try to tamp down that, like what it felt like to find out there was infidelity in my marriage, what it felt like to realize my hopes and dreams for my marriage were over. And that feeling just kept coming back to me and coming back to me. And I finally got control over it. And it's because I kept doing those practices. Yeah. I kept doing the exercises. I kept working on it. I didn't give up on myself. And now that feeling is under control, and I don't have the trigger when I see it in a movie that the husband is cheating on the wife, so, but it takes so much work, and I guess that's part of the lesson too, is don't give up on yourself.
Right.
Don't give up on you. Don't give up on that 16-year-old. Don't give up on that scared wife of 5 years ago. Don't give up on you. But realize that life is going to hand you something that's going to make you go back to a time of pain. And you become that 18-year-old again. And you have to just look at that, or, close your eyes, see the 18-year-old who's scared to death, and say, honey, it's all going to be okay. Look, we're okay. Look at me. And you have this weird subconscious, but I learned that. I learned that from Catherine Woodward Thomas and Calling in the One. I learned that from her, and that is not one of the exercises in the book, but it's I have something similar. But that changed my understanding of how I was reacting to things, and I really came a long way after I could think, okay, little 16-year-old Kelly, it's all going to turn out okay, so you can stop reacting like that
Right.
now. Yeah.
Yeah, it is, but having that coming to terms moments, because there are many of them, and facing yourself and also everything else that's happened, and when you get to the chapter of forgiveness, subsequently everybody else or anybody else that has impacted you or you feel like you need to forgive or want to forgive, that it's very hard constantly putting yourself in through that and reminding yourself of what occurred in order to be able to get past it.